let's wrap up chapter 4. This is chapter 4, episode 3, and we're going to finish this socialization chapter with agents of socialization. So really important institutions that have an influence on our personality, our learning, and our entire socialization process. All right. So here are just a few: family, school, peers, and mass media. Of course, there are a lot of other ones that the book talks about, but we'll focus on these. One of my favorite teachers, Jack Black. Anyway, agents of socialization, familiar settings that have profound effect in this entire socialization process. We're made up of ourselves. We are connected to others in this human world and impacted by larger forces. And some of these are the larger forces that we're talking about when we talk about agents of socialization. Yes, they're familiar to us, and they are usually pretty big institutions. So family is the first one. When we asked who had the greatest impact on us when we were growing up, most everybody listed somebody, from their family somehow, whether that's a brother or sister, mother, father, grandparents. So it says may have, but it usually does have the greatest impact on socialization. From the time you're a baby, you're dependent in most cases on your family for everything. And of course, your family is there for many different reasons, but intentional learning and then learning from the environment just that adults create. So intentional, what your parents try to teach you. So manners, health, basic skills for living, values, belief. I'm going to sit down and here's what you do at the dinner table, or here's how you treat women, or whatever that might be. And then, of course, our family also teaches us from the environment that adults create. So how they see the world, themselves, whether we see the world as dangerous or trustworthy, see ourselves as stupid or smart, whether we're loved or just tolerated. We are greatly impacted by the quality of our surroundings. And so just like manifest and latent functions, intentional, more intentional, learning what you pick up from your parents and that environment that they create. Our family also gives us our social position, at least immediately out of the gate. Ethnicity, religion, class, all of those things develop as part of our self-concept. And of course, some of those things can be changed. Some of them cannot be. So race and racial identity is transmitted from our family. And of course, if we look at class position impacts how parents raise their children, not just how much money, but what they expect from their children. And we can look, and sociologists have, at lower class and more well-off folks. And lower class families choose traits like obedience, conformity, get this job, keep it. It's a trade. You'll always have something. Work at it. You'll be safe. You'll have insurance. Conformity. And well-off folks who might have more money, good judgment, creativity. Maybe that was you had money for like summer art classes, whatever that might be. And of course, that's not always the case. But generally speaking, the worldview of the parents shapes the worldview of the children. And then that also translates into what is possible to achieve, right? Certainly it's possible that poor kids from poor families can be encouraged to do things outside of expectations. Absolutely, right? However, a lot of times that's not the case. I remember I don't want to be a teacher. Matter of fact, when they asked me if I wanted to teach college over at Front Range, I actually said no so fast that they told me that no one's ever told them no so fast. And I said, my parents are teachers and I know what they make, and I'm just not interested in that. My dad was a musician. He sang in a band for 50 years. I also am a lead singer of a band. I'm also a teacher. I'm also, oh my gosh, I'm just like my parents. So even though it's not conscious oftentimes, so consciously or not, parents do act in a way to encourage children to follow in their footsteps. And depending on socioeconomic class, that might be more strict, or that might be not as, like, go do your creative thing, do what you want to be, you can be anything. Or here's what you should do because that's safer and better, and we've done that and it's going to work out. Anyway, family, obviously big. So why might the family be considered the most important socializing agent? And what did you or your family teach you about food? What are your food rules? As we're thinking about the Food Matters Project and working towards that, like, really interesting, because we find out when I ask my classes this, that we just have so many food rules, or we've been socialized so many ways. Maybe that's eat everything unless you leave the table, or my parents don't buy juice doesn't have real juice in it, or we eat mostly organic food, whatever that might be. All right, school. This is number 2 on our agent of socialization. Now you're moving from just being around your parents all the time, and it broadens your social world, right, in a huge way. You have access to other ideas, other people than other people from your family, people from different backgrounds, social class, gender, race, ability, and certainly experiences. And I have Storm's field trip. Storm is my first son. He's 15 now, but I remember when he was in kindergarten, he has always gotten along with people with differing levels of abilities or disabilities. Always, always, always. So he was asked as a kindergartner to go on a special field trip one-on-one with a friend of his with Down syndrome. And I can't tell you how proud we were, because really up to that point, unconsciously, we'd never taught him one thing or another. Just treat everybody equally, treat everybody with like good intention and respect. But he translated that in a way that a lot of kids do not. And so when he was invited on that field trip, extremely proud of him, and certainly he's continued to do that, and has several friends that have different learning abilities or disabilities, and I think it's just a great trait in a human being. But then all of a sudden, like, because of that, you're at school, you're around all sorts of things and people, ideas that you've never been. So schools teach skills, they teach knowledge, and then a hidden curriculum. What? Yeah, that's what I'm into, right? As a sociologist, lessons. Maybe the hidden curriculum would be like, I mean, they teach competition and contests and sports and competition is success, but you know, oh my gosh, Pledge of Allegiance, right? That we had already kind of mentioned, right? Is a way sort of subtly that the country is morally good. It also sort of propagates or promotes the dominant religion in society, but they don't come out and say it. So there are the hidden pieces that kids pick up at school that's unintentional, and the same thing is true, you know, manifest latent functions in our families as well. First time you're going to interact with bureaucracy, time schedules, formal rules. Oftentimes it can't be broken without punishment, and teaches kids really lessons about many of the agencies and institutions that they're going to be working with or a part of as they grow up. So another thing is it socializes kids into gender roles. One of the questions I often ask my class is, what gender do you identify with, and what did you play out on the playground? And sometimes we find that people who identified with the gender female played house and hopscotch and monkey bars and things like that. Of course, there are some people that identify the gender female that were playing football and dodgeball as well. Then we go over students or people that identify with the gender male early on, football and dodgeball and all sorts of things that are associated with gender roles, physical activity versus social roles that are encouraged of women or people that identify as a gender female, helping out teachers more, or more aggressive classroom behavior, maybe versus the well-behaved or quieter behavior from those that identify with being gender female, being girls. So school, a lot going on. If we Google school boy or school girls, now I did this years ago before the school had any type of filters. Thank goodness we have filters now, but school boys, school girls, right? And that really gets to the momentum that we'll talk about, sociological momentum that something has behind it, of search engines as well. I mean, Google is just a reflection of human beings. If we type in fuel, we'll get pages and pages and pages of gas until we maybe finally get down to like a solar panel or a windmill. So this also gives us an idea of how these ideas and notions, maybe gender roles, are embedded in our society, so much so that there's bias even built into something as simple as a search engine. All right, so let's just break down gender in school quickly. Gender roles are expectations regarding the proper behavior, attitudes, and activities of males and females. Of course, now we are not just stuck, and we'll get to that in our chapter on gender, with a binary system, and that is a very, very positive thing for people who have not been one or the other for very long. I have, what about the trans community? Trump administration has scrapped an Obama directive aimed at protecting the rights of transgender students. This has happened across the board with all sorts of things with this administration and human rights, but we'll get into that later. Boys across the country have never been in more trouble. They earn 70% of the D's and F's that teachers give out. They make up 2/3 of students labeled as learning disabled. They're culprits in 9 out of 10 alcohol and drug violations, suspected 4 or 5 out of crimes. Look, gender and these roles, they get cemented and we get socialized into them early. And the last one, the worst one of all, they will grow up to enact over 95% of the violence in this culture. And some of those individual statistical categories, you're looking at 98, 99% of the violence, those who identify as the gender male. Something that is, if you are male or female, completely unacceptable. I'm also hoping that the people in this class that identify as the gender male realize how abysmal of a statistic that is, and that it's your job and my job and our jobs to make sure that we change this. It's very important to me, having 2 sons, that this is not the case moving forward. But sadly, truly, where we're at right now. Girls receive less attention from teachers. Oftentimes it can be more negative. They socialize girls towards a feminine ideal, praised for being neat, quiet, and calm. And maybe socialized to recognize popularity as being more important than educational performance and ability. That being said, there is a lot of evidence that women are being more successful academically, graduating at higher rates in colleges and high schools with better grades. But our classrooms still show that girls and boys continue to be socialized in ways that work against what we're going for. And as sociologists, we're looking at it as a society and culture, more gender equity instead of having these big disparities in our equality in regards to gender. So what can you remember from your early schooling experiences? How did they shape your life and sense of self? How are boys and girls treated differently in your school experience? Can you identify instances of gender bias? And inevitably, there are students that have experienced gender bias at school here at CSU as well. So not just something that we're talking about in as far as grade school or middle school or high school. A lot of these gender norms and the way that we are socialized in school continues on into college and beyond. All right, agents of socialization. The third one we're going to talk about, peer group. So a social group whose members have interest, social position, and age in common. Now, I've got friends that are 20 years older than me, but they are not considered from a sociological standpoint in my peer group or to be members of my peer group. Age is an important one. Children learn how to develop relationships on their own without parents, right? They can escape direct adult supervision, which is huge, and they can start to get into interests that adults may not share or even tolerate. I mean, my friends, used to kill bugs, and my friends and I used to kill bugs with magnifying glasses. My parents probably not into that. We'd find whatever we could in the garage, or we'd get firecrackers and we'd blow up our Star Wars and G.I. Joe guys. My parents don't have a particular interest in explosions or demolitions, and as a matter of fact, told me to stay away from that. But that didn't stop me, right? So my question to you, how many of us have parents that did not like a certain friend or group of peers? Everybody's hands to go up in a classroom normally. Did that stop us from hanging out with them? Very few people that stopped us from hanging out with them. So that tells me a couple things. One, as a parent, that tells me that not everything I say my kids are going to do. Secondly, it tells me that peer groups are important to kids. Helps them break away from families and think of themselves as adults and individuals, right? And they think they're breaking away. I mean, the parental influences still stay really strong, but it's one of our first ways that we get that taste of independence and what is it that you like, not what activity do your parents have planned for you for that day or week or month or year. Anticipatory socialization, important one, going to be on the test. When you begin to enact the behaviors and traits of the status you expect to occupy. So to groups that we believe will eventually belong. I mean, I remember when my kid first asked for coffee, he's getting up in middle school super early, just couldn't wake up. So I'm like, okay, let me do some research. Does it really stunt your growth? It does not. All right, so he's drinking coffee in the morning. He asked because he saw us drinking coffee in the morning. So it's that kind of thing. Maybe drug use or smoking. You see adults doing it. Then you meet somebody maybe who's a teenager and does it. And you sort of practice or enact those behaviors that you might expect to occupy, right? So we're mimicking styles maybe of goth kids to join that group, right? Maybe we look at a group of kids and we're like, that looks great. I'm going to dye my hair black and dress all in black. That looks fun, and maybe I can fit in with that group. Or maybe conform to the standards and beliefs by administrators to get a job. I mean, do you think that I dressed up for my job interview here at CSU? Absolutely. Do you think that I tucked in my shirt? No, I can't tuck in my shirt or I can't breathe. But I did other things, right? I dressed up. I wore a tie. I even remember laughing at the jokes of the person that was interviewing me that I didn't think were all that funny, but yes, now we have something in common. Hire me, right? So anticipatory socialization, a big part here, because it's that learning, that socialized learning that we're talking about, that I've been talking about in this chapter, that helps us get to that desired position, right? I mean, not just going to walk in in ripped shorts and jeans and a t-shirt and be like, hey, bro, you should hire me to teach because I'm super good, right? Anyway, maybe that's a bad example, but you get what I mean. Finally, mass media. The means for delivering impersonal communications to a vast audience. TV used to be the big deal, but obviously now you have the world's most powerful supercomputer in your pocket, right? So what's the expectation that we actually use that in a responsible manner? I think that can be very different, super powerful, and the influence from the mass media different from our family or school or our peers. So it has a huge impact on our effect and a huge, enormous impact on our attitudes. It can be educational. Look, you can look up on your phone something in 2 seconds, and then you've got that idea, and it was really important. Or you can spend a whole day looking up stuff that you'll never use again in your whole life. I don't know. TikTok, for example. Anyway, years before we learned to read, television watching happens regularly. We see kids in strollers that parents have given an iPad to or a phone to, and you are seeing kids spend more time in front of the screen than they do in school, more time than interacting with their parents. And I think there was a question, it was years ago, it was like a statistic, how much FaceTime do kids have with their dad? Maybe every single day. And I thought it was 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour. I think it was like 30 seconds of just one-on-one meaningful time. So mass media, a huge influencer. Which gender is more addicted to their phone? We can Google that, see what Google thinks. Media and politics, I think many sides of the political spectrum are going to argue that there's political bias. Certainly there is. Mass media and violence, studies between screen time, TV time, game time, and violence. And I'll get to that in a second. Now we've got something, right? The Twitter president, something very new over the last 4 years, sort of when media addiction takes center stage, right? I mean, how do we respond as humans or sociologists when people take their personal problems and transform them into public issues or global issues or problems? I mean, leaders of entire countries waking up in the morning and being mad at each other and yelling at each other through Twitter. So obviously, mass media for human beings has really come a long way, and faster and faster and faster in its influence of our daily lives, how much media we ingest, how many hours we're in front of it, and the combination of all of those: TV time, screen time, game time, phone time. And it is different. It's quite a bit different than it was 20 or 30 years ago. Maybe you'd show up to a restaurant before folks had cell phones. I was kind of that last group of people that was at college right before everybody got cell phones. We could meet somebody in a concert with 20,000 people and find them right away, right? We get to a restaurant, maybe instead of looking at your phone immediately, you sit down and think about, oh, what am I doing in my life? What do I have to get done? What am I trying to accomplish? Rather than sort of grab the phone right away. So not always saying it's a negative influence, but again, in 30, 40 years, it's gone from Pac-Man, maybe a little yellow guy eats a bunch of pills. Okay, that's a little weird. I agree. Or Donkey Kong, I'm a monkey and I'm throwing barrels and you have to jump over the barrels. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But then you fast forward to something like Grand Theft Auto or beyond, where you're able to hire a hooker, kill her, take your money back, tie her to the front of a car, kill police officers. I never really have put too much into the research, and I don't think there's a lot out there between violence and screen time and video games. It doesn't necessarily translate, but what we are used to and how we are used to ingesting mass media and media more and more and more, something we definitely need to look at that can not only have health implications and repercussions, but certainly alter the way that we interact and socialize with the world around us, sometimes in positive ways, sometimes in neutral ways, and sometimes in less desirable negative ways. All right, that's going to wrap it up. This is chapter 4 on socialization. Be good people and do good things, and I don't know, go out there and jump over some barrels or wugga, 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 or do something, or Fortnite or dancing. And yeah, it's such a long time ago. My sons tell me Fortnite's not even a thing anymore. So I'm not going to floss, but I will tell you, be good people and do good things and live life and listen to music. And I hope you're having a great semester, and please reach out if you need anything. Take care, everybody. Hope you're having fun in this class. Peace.